Yo, what up guys? In today's video, I'm going to go over everything that you need to know about the tier 5 solo dungeon. Now, if you don't know, in tier 5, pretty much all the mechanics change except for Umbrakan. Umbrakan still seems relatively the same, but his Q blocks are kind of a little bit tougher to telegraph. Like, it isn't exactly the easiest to do. But once you get used to his rotation and everything, you can kind of get him down pretty easily. Now, Lionhead is completely different except for maybe like one mechanic. All of his mechanics are completely different in tier 5. Now, these guys hit extremely hard, okay? So if you are using a dagger, you're gonna have a fairly easier time. It is very, very, very important, right? Regardless of what you're using, if you're using dagger spear, dagger greatsword, anything with a dagger, it is very important that you pick up this one passive called Bloodseeker. What this does is it basically makes your passive Assassin's Instincts. It now restores health by 5% of your melee critical hits. So every time that you critical hit, you're gonna get 5% of that back as health. So it's very big, very big. This will keep you alive throughout this dungeon. Your critical damage is reduced, but it's not that big of a deal for the trade-off of being able to live throughout the whole thing. Now these guys do hit extremely hard, so that's very important to get. If you do not have a dagger and you're not using a dagger, hopefully you're using like a bow or something for some passive healing, or like the hots, because these guys, like I said, hit very, very hard. But let's get into the boss and let's discuss the mechanics. So for this boss, I highly recommend taking the health because it'll help you a lot. Like I said, he does a lot of damage. So take the health. You can grab stamina, but I really think you'd prefer health over this. Also keep in mind that the little blue streaks on the floor, they don't slow you, they will now stun you. So try your best not to stand in any or hit any of the blue little streaks on the floor. You can actually jump over them. You don't have to go around them. You can actually jump over them and they won't affect you. However, if you do hit them, they will stun you. As you can see in tier 5, his Q blocks are going to be hard to telegraph. Honestly, your best bet is just to keep doing this over and over and over until you get used to the animations and the timing. It'll get easier as you continue doing it. One of the more important things to do is he does this little AoE cone thingy like in front of him that will go all the way down the map. Just make sure that you're always moving around him in a circle when you're attacking him, so that way you avoid that big damage. If you have extra stamina, when he moves to the middle like this, you can Q block to avoid some damage. However, you need to make sure that you always keep a Q block for his actual mechanic that he's doing right here. This will actually trigger the new mechanic that he does in tier 5. It's very important here that you look at the color of the little circle in front of him when he's casting. If it is red, that is not one you want to block. If it's blue, you want to run in front of him and block that blue one, and then you can go back to doing your normal rotation. It's very important that you do this because if you fail to block the blue one and it goes all the way to the pillar, that pillar will be unusable whenever you get to the final mechanic, and it'll basically do a ton of damage to you. That is the first major mechanic. He will do this 3 times, right? One for each pillar. Once he's out of the 3 pillars, he kind of reverts to the last mechanic, which I'll explain in a bit. After the 3rd time, so for the 4th time, he will teleport to the middle and he will do this jumping animation. Just time it correctly and jump with him as he comes back down. And then he will go to the last mechanic. And that last mechanic is similar to how it used to be. You just go to the pillar and you grab the corresponding symbol and bring it back. And you do that for the 3 pillars. And then he's going to eventually go back to, he's going to unleash in the middle, and you have like a free maybe 5-second window to do damage to him before he reverts back to his normal condition. After that, that's literally it. There is no new mechanic to it. Just make sure you repeat the same process and don't step on the little blue slits on the floor because they will stun you and mess up anything that you're trying to do. He's very tough in the very beginning when you're first learning him, but once you get used to the animations and the rotations and everything, he feels pretty easy. So just takes time. Just keep going at him over and over and over, and it'll eventually get easier. Now for this guy, I advise taking health as well, just so you have some extra room to work with. You can take stamina if health is not a problem to you, but this guy is very, very similar to how he used to be in the other tiers. It's just a little bit tougher to see his Q block. You just have to really get used to the animations and just react to it. Some of them are fast, some of them are slow. I really recommend just going at this guy multiple times over and over and over to get used to it. That's when it'll finally get easier. Another really big tip for this guy is every time that you Q block, you need to make sure you dump your active ability, which means that you need to hit Q again. So if you perfect block, you should, depending on what weapons you're using, have another Q basically to get rid of before you can Q block again. So since this guy does a lot of Q blocks, make sure that you Q block and then you immediately dump it so you Q again, and then you're ready for the next Q block. That is very important. A lot of people make this mistake of not dumping their active ability, and it ends up you're not able to use a Q again right after you need it. So like I said, he's literally the same boss. It's just harder to actually hit your Q blocks. You just need to do this boss over and over. I promise you, it took me like 30-40 tries initially to get the hang of it. And then I finally got the hang of it. I learned the timing on the animations, and it got a lot easier. The only real new mechanic to this guy that I guess does a lot of damage is whenever he does his swinging animation, and even if you dodge through that perfect block it or whatnot, he will leave like a big AoE, like a poison AoE. Try not to sit in that poison. It will do a lot of damage, a lot of tick damage, and it'll mess you up while you're working on trying to kill this guy. And then even though he has the same mechanics as the other tiers, I will explain the main mechanic. Basically next to his nameplate up there, you need to dodge all of his Q blocks up to 7. As soon as you hit 7, he will do the jumping animation over to the tree, and that's when you know you've made it. If you don't hit this mark, right, like let's say you fail all of the Q blocks or whatnot, he will throw like a beam at that tree over there in the corner, and it will actually one-shot you. I don't think I've ever lived it. It does. It's basically a one-shot. So it's very, very, very important that you stay very close to this guy and you try to dodge all of his Q blocks. If you stay close to him, you should have around, I want to say 10 attempts. So it's like you need to hit 7 out of 10 tries, out of 10 of his Q blocks, while keeping alive, you know, from the poison or whatnot, to actually have this boss function. So always try to get at least 7, and then as soon as you hit 7 on the marker, he will jump, and then he will continue the mechanic where you can free DPS him. I think that's about it. So hopefully this video helps you guys out in some way, and if it did, let me know by hitting that thumbs up button, guys, because I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, you can always leave a comment down below. I try my best to respond to every single one, so feel free to do that. But yeah, see you guys next time. Peace.